Hello and welcome to Vox Markets. Today I'm joined by Craig Martin, who's chairman at Dynam Capital, and there's an association between Dynam and Vietnam Holdings, which is what we're going to talk about. Isn't that right, Craig?
That's right, yes. Dynam Capital is the fund manager for Vietnam Holding, and Vietnam Holding is a closed-end fund listed on the main board of the London Stock Exchange and invests exclusively in Vietnam.
The clue is in the name. Yes, well, I've watched
exactly.
I've watched a bit of the Grand Tour when the boys are running around that country, and it seems to be, from what they say, a booming place. I hope that research is not too down market, but that's what I've got at the moment.
Well, look, it's either that or it's Portillo on a train journey. So you take your pick. I think the car journey was fantastic too. Look, it's an amazing country. It's a very long, narrow country. It's 2,000 kilometers from top to bottom, takes 36 hours by train, and if you really want to, a day driving or 2 hours flying. So it's a big country, a lot to see, 100 million people, and it's a phenomenally interesting emerging market.
So it almost sounds like a sort of a mini continent in its own right because of that sort of latitude aspect that it has. What are the main focuses or sectors there? Is it an across the board thing? Is it special? Is it big in IT? What are we looking at?
Well, look, Vietnam has been on an incredible journey in a relatively short period of time. It only kind of came into the folds of the international community 30, 40 years ago when it opened up after the Vietnam War, or the war with America, as they call it. And started out as many emerging countries do. When they, given a real boost, they start to manufacture for export. If they do a good job in that, they attract foreign direct investment, and you get this virtuous cycle. And Vietnam has really played well to that over 3 decades, and it's kind of compounding its growth, and it's moved up the value chain from an exporting country of kind of furniture and food and basic materials to more high tech. So as the country's got wealthier as a result of that and modernized, for us as an investor, there's a much broader range of investment opportunities. So we look at the domestic consumer. You've got 100 million people, increasingly wealthy, above that $3,000 per capita GDP. So they're consuming, they want to buy domestic products as well as imported products. We look at the urbanization story. Vietnam's urbanization rate is still very low. It's 40% of the population live in the major cities, which is where Europe was perhaps at the end of the Second World War. So there's a big growth in the cities and in the urban infrastructure. And for us, that's opportunities in real estate developers, modern retailers, that kind of thing. And then the whole industrialization. So as I mentioned, big export market, foreign direct investors come in. We're not really playing the kind of export story, but we're backing the businesses themselves that are part of this chain, the business to business linkages in that industrialization story. So logistics, the ports, manufacturers of building materials, that kind of thing. So we've got a very diverse palette, and that's all underpinned by the banking sector, of course. So within that, we look to really focus on a very concentrated portfolio. We've got about 25 stocks drawn from those areas. So that's the domestic consumer, industrialization, and urbanization.
But I mean, there are plenty of emerging countries all around the world, in South America or Africa or here or there. Is there any special aspect to Vietnam, either the culture or the sort of the legal side or the demographic? Is there a secret sauce in there? Is it something that makes it special, or is it just you picked on this because it's a cool place to go?
Look, it is a cool place to go, but no, I think it's the people. It's 100 million people. They're hardworking, well-educated, they're driven. The Vietnamese people think they're better off than their parents, and they expect their children to be better off than them. And that hardworking, it's kind of an East Asian, a Confucian society where they're driven to succeed. They do care about what happens to their neighbors within the country. And they've been through a lot of challenges in the past and have overcome those. So there's a great sense of can-do and self-belief. And the government, although the country is run through a communist party type structure, they're very much putting Vietnam as part of the global scene. So they want Vietnam to be a middle-income country, increasingly part of the global supply chain, which already is a large part, and see the wealth of the people increase as the economy modernizes. So I think it's a combination of the people, a combination of a dogged determination of the leadership, plus the natural endowment, the location at heart of Asia. You've got the North Asian manufacturers nearby looking to do more in Vietnam, so the South Koreans and Taiwanese and Japanese. You've got China as a border to the north. Vietnam exports to China. It imports a lot of raw materials from China. And then you've got this whole ASEAN hub, which Vietnam became a member of several years back. So unlike perhaps parts of South America or Africa, where many issues perhaps holding back the growth in those emerging countries, Vietnam's really on a different pace and pulse. And as I say, its growth has been on average 6.5% GDP growth the last 30 years. And it's been steady, strong growth. So it really is quite an interesting place. And although it's an emerging country by characteristic, it's actually classified as still as a frontier market. So it's still very much off the radar of a number of investors. And over time, we hope that will change.
Right. And just a couple of points to close. First, I take it the jurisdiction and the political side is stable, that it's not sort of changing governments and having coups and this and that and all the other stuff, the fun stuff that people have around the place?
Well, look, as you look at Southeast Asia as a whole, it's a kind of patchwork quilt of countries, isn't it, with lots of issues. Vietnam's got a very large dominant ethnicity, unlike Burma, that's got 150 kind of tribal groups. Vietnam is largely one ethnicity, one common language, and people working together. You've got a stable government. There's every 5 years they change the seats and who sits in the seats, but it's a very stable government. It's not a fully democratic country like other parts in the world, but it has resulted in that stability and a commitment to modernization. And they're happy to see the country modernize. We're just, in the last 12 months, take the stock market as a case in point. There have been over 1 million new investors domestically in the stock market. So that's Vietnamese individual retail investors, over 100,000 a month. I think last month, 150,000 new accounts open. So although it's a control, perhaps, economy with respect to, Communist Party and the historical kind of conservativeness that brings in, very much open to modern trends. So it's got a massive e-commerce player. It's going to be a significant part of the e-commerce world, both domestically as well as part of the overall chain, software sourcing and unicorns that will develop in Vietnam, but also retail investors participating in looking after their trading needs and their planning perhaps for the longer term finance. So it's very much an open economy, yet it has that stability from a very conservative structure, a bit like China had, and Vietnam has some similarities to the tremendous growth that China's shown over the last 20 years. Yet, unlike China, Vietnam doesn't want to be the largest economy in the world. It wants to be part of a global scene. So it's chosen a path to be very inclusive internationally and trades with everyone and works with every country.
Yeah, and just finally, the obvious question, you've got Vietnam under your belt. Would you go to other countries in the area, or there are other countries where you might think, well, actually, we'll do a Cambodia holdings, or we'll do a Taiwan, or we'll do a this or the Indonesia, or there's so many in that neck of the woods, rather large neck of the woods, but there are plenty of stable, emerging or frontier countries. Would there be a prospect of you replicating, or there being a similar model?
No, we're very happy in Vietnam. It's the second most liquid market in ASEAN, over $1 billion of stock traded a day, 1,600 companies for us to kind of navigate and choose. So we're very focused, small portfolio, 25 positions, concentrated. And what we're trying to do is really engage on the ground authentically with each of those portfolio companies on their environmental social governance journey. So we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. We want to be focused. We want to play to our strengths as having got a good team, big team on the ground in Vietnam, and that's plenty of opportunity there for us for the next 5 to 10 years. So no, we're happy in Vietnam.
Well, if you need a helping hand, you know who to ask. But in the meantime, Craig Martin, Chairman of Dynam Capital, thank you very much indeed. Great story.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.